Hello, hello. Today is part 2 of the Building Your Life Around You series with Judy Gallagher. Episode 2 is going to be all about how life rewards the brave. So I'm going to welcome Judy on in just a moment here. But if you are new here, my name is Presh. I'm a certified life coach helping you through your pursuit of peace and purpose. So without further ado, I am going to start getting Judy pulled up here. Just know we will be doing Q&A at the end of this. So if you have any questions at all, you can go ahead and leave your comments or your questions in the comment section, and we'll be answering those at the end. All right. Hopefully that worked. Okay, there we go. Hey, Judy.
Hi, Fresh. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yes, I can. I'm going to turn the volume up just a little bit more, but yes, I can. Well, yay!
Yeah, and happy International Women's Day. I didn't know it was Women's Day, so this is like perfect because we're talking about how life rewards the brave and you get to continue to talk about your story. So I think it's perfect timing.
Oh, thank you, and happy Women's Day to you too, Fresh. I know, it's kind of a cool international holiday to celebrate, so.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, last time you were talking about how you worked up the courage to leave to Florida, leave
Yep.
and get a divorce, the terrible situation you went over last time, and kind of going into your complex PTSD and how things kind of eventually went up from there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So the recap is I wanted to give our short little series here some context. So how I have PTSD, I call it complex PTSD. It just means that I had PTSD for more than 6 months. And a lot of people will have complex PTSD from childhood, but in my case, most of it actually came from my first marriage. So I got engaged at 25, I was married at 26. And I think it was right before my 28th birthday that I came down to Florida, and I actually got divorced from Florida. And Florida is a surprisingly easy state to get divorced from. So if that's helpful to anyone, once you establish residency, it can make the process a lot easier. But today's episode is really just about rebuilding your life. So again, happy International Women's Day to everyone. Hope you're having a great day, and I'm just gonna kind of jump back into my story. So I really latched on to one idea, and what happened at the time is basically when you first get out of a situation that has had a lot of trauma or triggered a lot of PTSD, you may or may not come across to other people as functional or talkative, but you tend to be a little bit emotionally numb. And so I was very numb for a while, and the one idea that I had in my mind was that I'm going to become a ballroom dancer. And where it came from was just I had almost become a professional ballroom dancer when I first started working, but I opted to work for a school instead. So I held on to that, and I kind of used that to basically get on my feet. So what I was telling Presh about when we met earlier this week was just that I really feel that I've rebuilt my life not once, but actually at least twice, 2 times that were very conscious and I was very aware of. What attracted me to the ballroom dancing was just this idea of I've been a very successful dance teacher, studio owner, but the more I taught, the less time I had for training for myself. And if you've taught in any setting, you just know that it's very challenging for your students to really dream a lot of times beyond their role models, which is the teachers, like one of the frontline ones. So it's really important to keep up with your training. And I thought that the ballroom dance community would be a really great way for me to really just get started again and just follow a dream that I hadn't followed through years ago. And I just jumped straight into it. I called the studio I ended up working for and just told them I wanted to work there. And the owner initially she brought me in for an interview. She basically told me that she absolutely loves me, wanted to hire me, but she was like, I just actually don't have any jobs available right now, like right this second. And I said, okay, that's totally fine. You're the first studio I came out to, so I'm going to leave my information, but just call me if anything changes. And then she ended up calling me a couple days later. Somebody was sick, so she brought me in to cover a couple of group classes. I did that. And there was some kind of miscommunication between the owner and the active manager of the studio, because the active manager of the studio had also interviewed me and was basically, okay, great, I'll see you tomorrow. And so I actually just started going to the studio every day and working there every day. I was taught some group classes, covered the desk, and I was there like 2 weeks before I went back to the owner. And I was like, I just kept coming because the manager kept asking me to come, but I was like, I have a job now, right? And I mean, she kind of laughed and was like, it just kind of ended up working out as they had somebody leave. So I started out as an office manager, but I had a very clear idea that I wanted to be a professional ballroom dancer. So, I mean, again, in this stage, I was very numb, not having a ton of access to my feelings, and also slightly hyperactive, like just being really excited to be free out of my situation. So I just dived right in. I found my own coaches. I found a professional dance partner. 6 months into it, I was teaching full time on the floor. I was, I mean, this all happened so fast to me. Like, it feels like it happened in like the blink of an eye, where everything I had thought about in terms of the ballroom dancing started happening, and it was a lot. So I was dancing pro, my first competition, borrowed a dress from a girl named Stephanie, really nice girl. She just completely loaned it to me. I had almost no money actually when I went to my first competition, and my sister, who's younger than me, loaned me $200. I flew on Spirit with a bag about this big, had the costume in it, some like hairspray, essentials, and like the costume, wore some layers, and just went out and did it. And then things kind of exploded in a great way. It was very intense. I would practice in the morning before work, before my classes that I taught, and then I would teach for 8 hours, and then I had a 1 hour lunch break, and then I would, after work, sometimes practice again. And it was a very intense schedule, and it's what I needed at the time, which is why I bring it up. So the first time I rebuilt my life, it was really about the distraction, because I was having a lot of trouble sleeping at night, having insomnia, having nightmares. At about 6 months in, the blank spots in my memory went away, and I got all the memories that I'd kind of suppressed from what had happened in the years of that marriage started just piling in. So I luckily was working with a great therapist. First, I went to her in a panic. She said, it's actually a sign you're getting better, so just trust it. Try to just, when you feel sad, just cry it out. And she was like, it's a sign you're healing, that you finally feel safe. So that was amazing. And I spent a few years where in that state where my therapist basically was like, you're good. Like, you can manage your CPTSD. You can take a break from therapy if you don't have another goal that you want to work on right now. And I did take a break and thought I was living the best life ever and really enjoyed it. That's the time period where I won all my medals from my pro dancing, started bringing students to competitions. It's building, building, building. COVID happens. Our manager is fired. We bring a new manager in, very sweet girl, but everything was very new for her. And so I ended up doing a ton more work. And it was in this stage when I basically had achieved my dream, because I just had this idea of being a ballroom dance champion. And I didn't really have a super ambitious idea of it. I was like, I'll just be really happy about being a professional dancer and getting a medal, like one medal. And then I ended up with like 8 or 9 and moved up in the professional levels. But I realized I was spending all of my time teaching, all of my time practicing, all of my time traveling and going to events. And while some things were really fun and exciting about it, it was so much that it just started re-triggering some of my PTSD symptoms. And I started to get into this brain fog where I could not remember these moments I'd worked so hard for. So even though like we were placing, a lot of that time like really blended together, and I started to realize that I was just really struggling again, which was not good news for me. So I just very much could feel that pull into insomnia creeping back, kind of getting more flashbacks in the day and like more prone to some of the nightmares that I was having before. And just, okay, I think I'm having burnout, but I also feel like it's pulling my CPTSD and kind of feeling stuck is the way I would describe it. So actually, I was thinking, Presh, that maybe you would want to maybe take a moment just to speak to that part of it, because I know that this is a huge part about like rebuilding our lives.
Yeah, so burnout I think is so common, unfortunately. Not to normalize it in it's okay, like keep going type of way, but just to acknowledge that a lot of people experience it, and especially after everything you went through, like experiencing burnout, I'm sure was not easy. And especially in Western culture, you know, we really lean into the masculine energy.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar, I'll explain it real quick. We all, regardless of gender, have masculine and feminine energies. And ideally, we'd like to balance them both. But masculine is the go, 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 do, do, do. It is the, you know, it's the analytical side of the brain. And feminine energy is the being, it is the intuition, and it is that creative, intuitive side of the brain. And so when we are caught up in burnout, we're really leaning into that masculine energy, and we're not balancing kind of both sides. Not to say one's better than the other, but ideally having the balance is best. And so that's why I think it's so easy to get caught up in burnout, is because we normalize it as a culture. We really value that to-do list and the action-oriented things that we have going on.
Yeah, so it seems like at this time in my life, I had definitely for some reason, my reaction to what I had been through was this idea of like, I would say this is very like masculine energy type of idea of like this divide and conquer. Like what you went through, you're going to overcome it, and you're going to be able to live your life, have an amazing life, achieve all of these things. Like you're going to show all of these people that you're okay. I think that is the idea. Is I have this idea of like, I've got to go to work. I've got to be okay for my students. Not just be okay, but be great, be excited, be ready to go all the time, be on top of all of their lessons. And honestly, when you're in the teaching role, you really should be. Like, I mean, it's, you know, you should be energized to do these things, because otherwise it can be very difficult for the other person who is your student to learn or pick up on things. And I definitely really leaned into this idea of having these long-term goals, being this champion, and then breaking it down into more short-term goals. And I very much felt like a little hamster on the hamster wheel, going. And then I'm also kind of trying to carry this CPTSD, trying to like carry it. I can't really just get rid of it. That's not really how these things work. It's like your experiences are a part of you. You don't have to love all the experiences that you have, but you can accept that you lived through them. And what I realized when I was going through this is I basically realized, like, yes, I was definitely experiencing burnout. That feeling can be really scary. I was definitely felt a lot of pressure to pretend to be okay. And again, the company I was working for was Arthur Murray Dance Centers, which I'm okay with saying because they're literally very successful. They're the largest dance franchise in the world, which gives context to the type of lifestyle that I was living, which is the thing about dancing specifically, it's very physical. So getting the rest to be on your feet, you're trying to get the chance to rest your muscles, but you're also trying to stay on your A game all the time. And a lot of the times when you compete with your students, you're their partner, so you have to be really on top of that. I would say that it was at this time, I'm going to speak to, I actually didn't mention this to you, Prash, but just to make it really clear to everybody, I don't think this is something that people that have only like have PTSD or anxiety or CPTSD, I don't think this is the only time that this happens. I think that this can happen when somebody is just very, very burned out or very, very tired. But I had reached a point where I realized I really didn't like myself, and it's not because I didn't have pride in what I was doing or didn't enjoy parts of my lifestyle, but it had to do with I still hadn't worked with the treatment I had lived through. I hadn't kind of completely come to terms with this kind of idea of why did this happen to me. And the way that it showed initially was that I would have trouble actually just looking at myself in the mirror was just really challenging for me, and kind of triggering me and on these spirals where it was like somewhere I was aware that I didn't dislike myself, but I hadn't yet really healed enough to really fully like myself. Like I didn't like the fact that I lived through the experiences I did. I didn't really understand yet what it means to like have survived that. It still felt a little bit strange, and it was a struggle. Like I mean, I was definitely having some depression because again, the pretending I was okay when I wasn't necessarily, and it ultimately culminated in a conversation with my therapist. Well, there was actually three things that happened. The first thing is I worked a major event where I brought a lot of students and also competed as a professional. And on the very first day of the event, I got extremely sick and tried to ask for help. There was no one medical there. Somebody brought me cold medicine, and all of our customers paid so much money to be at this event, and I had so many jobs. And I somehow got through the event, which was 3 days long. I worked for 3 days. They had to bus the professional dancers to and from the hotel. That's how big the event was. They had to book us in a separate hotel. And I mean, I got like no sleep, like maybe 2 hours. I didn't even have enough time to wash my makeup off at night because we were practicing for the pro show at night. So I got really sick. I had been talking to my therapist, and I told my therapist, I can't do this anymore, and I don't want to do this anymore, and I don't know what to do. Basically, like I know I don't want to keep living my life this way. I still love dancing, but I feel lost. Like I don't know how to take the next step. And I also was acknowledging, I mean, I didn't speak as much to this, but I was working a lot, just a lot. Like I was basically a workaholic, and it's because I was distracting myself from my pain. And it's what I needed at the time. But basically I was looking at my therapist kind of going, I don't know if I need that anymore, but I also don't know how to change. And then the third thing was, after my talk with my therapist, she was very real and like, look, if you can make it happen, I just want you to take 2 weeks completely off. Not 2 weeks getting over your sickness, but like you're healed. You're going to take 2 weeks off, take a complete break from work, take a complete break from anything that is similar to work. So like do exercise that you want to do, but don't make yourself exercise. Like she was very like, make sure like you're just like do nothing for 2 weeks if that's what feels right to you. Just do what feels right. And then the third thing was, after I talked to my therapist, I reached out to my support system, which is mostly my parents and mostly my family, and also my boyfriend at the time, and just was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I am going to take this time off. I'm scared. I was very, very scared to lean into that. But it was my first, I think, step to living my life where I just embraced more of this feminine energy, where it wasn't about the hustle, 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 divide and conquer. But at first it was really difficult. It felt very weird. I like rolled up like a burrito in a blanket on the couch, and I like played games on my phone, like watched Netflix or something. And at first it was like so weird. Like I felt like I needed to be doing things. Like for a few days I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable resting. And then something switched over, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh my gosh, I never want to work again. And I just really leaned into this idea of taking an absolute break. And it was in that break where that is where the second rebuild started happening. So one of those things where it's just, again, getting off that hamster wheel. I just was kind of in that state, took my 2 weeks off, and then I again talked to my therapist and was like, I actually really like this. I want to do more of this. And so we extended the time where I was resting to be a longer period of time, and rather than trying to jump into like a whole nother career and work a 9 to 5, I restarted very, very small. So I started out where I was teaching like an hour and a half a week, and then it became like 3 hours, and then it was just kind of a slow build from there. I did not consciously think to myself, oh, I'm going to become a freelance teacher and just teach anything that I'm qualified for. But that is ultimately what ended up happening. And I just stopped fighting. I just stopped trying to divide and conquer the world. I stopped trying to divide and conquer myself. And it was fun. It was difficult in a way. Basically, there was a part of me that was like, if I'm not a professional ballroom dancer anymore, if I'm not trying to be a world champion anymore, then who the heck am I? Mm-hmm. And I definitely had this sense of kind of the next step was exploring that identity and figuring out the puzzle pieces. But I think that it was also awesome. I mean, it was just absolutely a totally different mindset. And right now my experience is also different, and we're going to spend a whole episode talking about how when things really click into place, like what it feels like, because I know that I haven't really felt this way ever in my life. So I'll be turning 32 this month, but in my 31 previous years, thank you, Crush, I just had never really had this sense of just like waking up and just feeling peaceful and feeling happy. I think that on our first episode, we really talked a lot about expectations. And the first episode, I really talked about growing up with, in the household I did, I had a military dad, had an immigrant mother. Both were very traditional, very Catholic, not as conservative as others, but definitely very strict. And feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to get married, I have to have kids, I also have to work, I also have to be a good housekeeper, I'm gonna do all of that. I tried to live that way, had that first marriage, and it just absolutely tanked in a way where, in this case, he was a very antagonistic person. So it left me with complex PTSD. So when you try to fulfill the expectations of everybody else, and you really think about, again, speaking to what you said, bringing in the masculine energy. To me, with that masculine energy, it's this idea of being a fortress, like against the world, and looking at all these external factors and just trying to protect, but also it's more of an offensive strategy, right? It's really very much about getting yourself out there, getting things, getting what you need. And it makes sense, I think, in my story where I had lived so much for others for so much of my life. When I left that first marriage, left it behind, basically had this feeling like, okay, well, that didn't work out. It was a Catholic marriage, so I can never get married again unless I get an annulment from the church, which can take years, which means like the storyline of expectations of being married and having kids is basically out the window. And so I kind of felt free in that sense where I'm like, I don't have to worry about that anymore, which I mean, it sounds terrible in a way, but I promise I don't mean it in a terrible way. I mean it in like a great way. And like, I just felt really free. Even though I was struggling, jumped into that lifestyle, and then I just really honed in into like what the world sees, where I'm like, what do I need? I'm like, well, I'm a professional dancer, so I need to have abs. So I need to stop eating sugar. I need to stop eating dairy. I need to stop eating carbs. And I did it. I mean, I did it like overnight. I just cut all of that out of my diet and felt like that definitely had an impact. I think that I might have been a little bit too strict with my diet. That probably had an impact on my health, but I felt amazing about it. But again, it was this very strict way of living that was kind of out of touch with all those feelings and all of those things that I had gone through. When I started, and this is still challenging for me, but when I started embracing more of this feminine energy, again, starting to rebuild my life. And this time I'm like, there is no crisis. The crisis is that I just feel so empty. I just feel like I have nothing to offer anymore. It's all gone. It's like if you ever read the book, I think it's called The Giving Tree, and the tree is like always giving to the little boy, and then the tree ends up as a little stump, and then the little boy comes back as an old man and sits on the stump. The thing is, like, you're not really supposed to be the tree. You're not really supposed to just give everything away. I mean, he finally comes back and he sits with the tree, but I think that story resonated with me. But I very much felt like I absolutely loved my students, loved a lot of the dancers that I worked with, didn't appreciate the ways that my company and also companies in general just really try to get so much out of their work staff, just really try to maximize them. And in a way, especially in the artistic fields, creative fields, really trying to feed off this idea of you're living your passion, ergo you should be basically okay with anything and everything, when in fact it really should be the exact opposite. I feel that students tend to be very understanding of boundaries because this is something that they enjoy a lot. And I think the idea of the person that you're going to come here and do this with, of them just feeling absolutely drained and struggling to make it through, eventually starts to come to the surface and eventually starts to show. So finally, as I started working through these things, I really did start to feel this rise in this feminine energy. And I never had a moment, again, we're talking like masculine versus feminine energy, like yin yang. I never had a moment where I sat down and was like, you know what? I have a fantastic idea. I know what my next big thing is. I kept waiting for this moment to happen, by the way. It never happened. I never had a moment where I was like, I know what my next big thing is. It's going to be this like huge goal. No, instead what happened was I had students reach out to me and be like, are you okay? I heard that you're engaged and I haven't seen you for a while. And how can I keep dancing if you're not there to teach me? Just started reaching out to me. And to the point where I finally was like, I had one student in particular, and he's actually getting married very soon on March 16th, which is a very big deal for him. I've known him for about 3 years now. But he was one of the ones where he was still a little bit early on in his dancing, and he reached out to me. He's a doctor. He works really hard, works all the time. He reached out to me, and he's basically like, if you're not like helping me learn how to do this, how am I ever gonna meet anyone? How am I ever gonna use these dance skills? And to the point where I was like, before I taught him lessons, I actually took him to Cowboys. I'd never seen this man in a pair of jeans in my life. So I called him before he went there. I said, hey, just so you know, it's a place with a very, very specific kind of style. So I recommend that you don't wear khakis, like just try to wear like jeans and a t-shirt. And he answers the phone and I'm so glad you told me that. I don't even own a pair of jeans. And I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder you really want to like break out of your lifestyle here a little bit. And I was like, okay, you're gonna go to Boot Barn and this is what you're gonna buy. Told him exactly what to buy, took him there, helped him revisit his dancing, introduced him to friends. And at the end I was like, well, like how many people did you dance with? Did you have a nice time? And he's like, I danced 3 times. I'm like, okay, great. With 3 different people? And he goes, no, with you every time. And I was like, oh my word. So I was like, okay, I was like, for you, we'll we'll do some lessons. So I taught him lessons, but I also started taking him to places and being like, you're gonna dance with 5 different people. And I'm super, super happy for him, super proud of him that he's married now. But that's actually how my freelancing started, is that happened. I had a couple of students reach out to me from North Carolina. It was actually their mom who reached out to me. They were children that I taught. And she was like, we just don't have anybody like you anymore. And with COVID, everything's been really difficult. Would you teach my girls virtually? And I did. So those were my first students that I started back with. And I just never stopped. And the more I did it, the more I've been teaching through freelancing. And it has expanded a little bit. It's definitely more of a creative company where, of course, I still choreograph a lot of dancing, but sometimes I have dancers come to me wanting to work in choreography, so I do that. And then I basically, if it's something that I have an experience in, I always do like a consultation first where we spend 30 minutes. I don't charge them. We sit down, have a conversation, find out what they're looking for, see if we're gonna match. I try some things out with them, and then I give them a plan of just based on what we did. I'm like, this is what I think we can do. And I've been doing that now for 3 years. And in the past, since January 2024, and now we're in March. So these first couple of months of 2024 have been by far my most successful months, just in the sense of just bringing in a lot of income through my business. But I mean, it was very natural and just completely different from any other stage of my career. It was not forceful. To make things easier on me, when I got married to my husband, moved into his house, we finished the garage as a dance studio. And so for people that I already know well, that I'm comfortable with having in my home, I actually just teach right out of my dance studio space at my house, which means that I just charge for my actual service, but they're not paying any overhead. I have a really nice collaborative studio that I can also rent out. And if there is overhead from that, then I let my student know beforehand, and then that's part of the value, but it's all worked out at the beginning typically. And I still work a lot with wedding couples and with people that are looking for more social dancing, but I also do some things with art, and I've just let things grow and just let things blossom. And I just have stopped trying to be really forceful. And of course, that's because my personality is, I look girly, but the feedback I get is I do have that highly determined personality. I naturally have a very self-disciplined personality where, again, I overnight gave up sugar, dairy, carbs. I mean, just never looked back. I didn't put dairy back into my diet until I talked to a nutritionist that was like, you, not everyone's this way, but you might actually need dairy in your diet because your immune system seems like it's struggling a little bit. So really being open to that kind of feedback and being like, maybe I shouldn't force myself to do that thing if I feel this tired. I mean, that has been a brand new journey for me. And I would say that for anybody that is having an experience where they're thinking about things changing up a little bit, I think that it's just a great, wherever you're at, if maybe you're more in the feminine side and maybe it's really hard for you to stick to a deadline or to like follow your schedule, I think that it's appropriate to figure out, like, with your building the type of life you want, like kind of the areas where you can start working that in. For me, I was very much on the masculine side, like force myself to heal, force myself to do this, until I just realized that doesning work. You can't force yourself to heal. That very much comes from the feminine energy thing. Like, rather than trying to force yourself to heal will prolong the process. If you let yourself heal, that's when it really starts happening. And I just can't believe, we're going to talk about this more next episode. I know that I need to bring this back to Fresh so that we can see. I actually didn't see any questions or comments, but we'll still see if you guys have anything that you want to say. But just really coming to a place where I had no idea that being okay with taking breaks, being okay going a little bit slower, letting myself heal, letting myself cocoon sometimes, letting myself nest sometimes. I just had no idea the impact that would have on my life overall. And there's some things that you can't put a price on, which is just waking up and feeling just good about yourself and good about your life and just happy to exist. Is just a huge win. And for me, this past couple months, and like I said, we're going to talk about it more, the amount of success that has come through from a business perspective since I've actually taken a step back has been wild to me, like exponentially different. And I think that the main key is just, I've kind of got both those energies now. I'm no longer dealing with one. I don't have to be everything, everywhere, all at once. Isn't that a movie? I don't even know.
Sounds familiar.
But I think that actually goes to something you mentioned, not on this live yet, but this idea of being aligned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you're talking about kind of when you got used to that balance and bringing in that feminine energy, you were able to use that with your client too, who was used to maybe taking things a little more seriously, like getting them out of their shell too.
Oh,
so it's really cool how it kind of just passes on.
It was so fun too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I actually wanted to hear a little bit more about what kind of this idea of being aligned, Presh, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit.
Yeah, and I know next time we're going to, so this came up when you were talking about how and we're going to talk about this next episode, so just to preface it, being in the right place at the right time. When you said that just reminded me of the idea of alignment, which is exactly what I think a lot of coaches help people with, but it's that idea of, in the first episode, I don't want to butcher the quote, but you said something about failure to meet expectations. Something beautiful happens or something when you fail to meet expectations.
I think
others' expectations.
Yeah, I think it's just, failure to meet those expectations. Like, I finally felt free to not meet them, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what brings us into alignment, because we have those constructs and those, like the idea of how we think we need to be. And then as soon as like that's out the window, we're like forced to just throw that out the window because we know it's not sustainable. Then it gives us the permission, and we finally give ourselves the permission to pursue what we want to pursue. And it's just so beautiful to hear that that's what happened for you. And it's funny because my process, I didn't go through anything like what you've gone through, but I think everyone has their different version of this when they figure out what their passion or their purpose is in life. And what I've noticed is it's finding that inner peace component, and then finding that balance of masculine and feminine energy, and then giving ourselves the permission to pursue what we want to pursue.
Yeah.
And then finally finding that. So I just think it's so beautiful. Like, you demonstrated it perfectly, without even trying. It, like, this whole thing is just synchronistic. Your story and, you know, what I teach and everything like that. So I just think it's so beautiful. And I know everyone's going to look forward to the next time and hearing more about the, you know, you pursuing your purpose and passion. But yeah, I think we can open up for questions if anyone has any questions for Judy.
Yeah.
Or for me, I guess. But
yeah, I didn't see any like comments or questions popping up in the corner like last time. But yeah, if you feel like if you want to participate in the conversation, we just want you to feel free. So you can put out a question there or put in a comment if you like. I actually did see at least one of my students log in there. I probably missed a couple people, but I saw Nikolai, so I'm excited that Nikolai logged in there. He's been a long time student of mine. And we've actually talked a lot about some of these things. And again, our main things we've been talking about, just like rebuilding your life. In today's episode, we really talked about this idea of, so I had worked through my CPTSD, had this like super intense career. It helped me for a long time, and then it started to pull me back, which is where we talked about burnout, CPTSD. And then I kind of moved into this next stage where I was so focused on letting myself heal. I had this other current being like, hey, you absolutely need to get on top of your stuff, and you need to do X, Y, and Z. Like, you need to find the next big thing. You need to make it happen. And, you know, I was like, I'm going to be a real estate agent. I'm going to be a salesperson. I'm going to do this and that. And like, I kept like finding these things, and it just never really quite felt right. Nothing wrong with any of those things, by the way. They think they're all great. And I do think that if you're working 9 to 5 and it works for you, that's perfectly valid and amazing. And something to what Presh said, where she said that she didn't have an experience maybe with this like super pivotal moment where your life is just shattered. And I would say that's a good thing. I think if you can get to a place where you're interested in aligning your life without having earth-shattering moments, that's fantastic. And that your experience is still perfectly valid, as is everyone's on here. It's just like, sometimes we struggle because we're human, and it's part of the process. And I think to just not fear that struggle can be challenging. I think we're told that to be grateful, told to be happy, told to just do absolutely everything that we can to show up a certain way. When really, I mean, I spent so much time in therapy talking about this, and then journaling about this, and then like going in my bathtub and thinking about this. And the idea is just self-honesty, like just being honest with yourself about what is happening, why you feel a certain way. Because generally speaking, and even if there is something going on, like maybe there is some brain chemistry thing going on there, generally it isn't your fault if you are unhappy. It's not like you choose to turn a switch on and off. That's like, okay, this is my happy switch, this is my sad switch. Like the mayor of A Nightmare Before Christmas, he has like this one face, and then he flips his head around and he has another face in the back of it. It's not really, if we're operating that way, then we're probably not in a good place. And so I actually feel that just wherever you are in life, maybe you are pretty happy with where you are in life, and you're like, well, I actually feel pretty good about these things, and these are the areas where I don't feel as good about. It's better to be honest about that. And if you're really unhappy with your life, you don't have to have a major, complicated, intense life experience. If you do have that experience, that's very valid. But it's good to just acknowledge why you're unhappy. It might just be that there's kind of a mismatch going on, or maybe you're really leaning into one of your energies and you want a little bit more of your masculine energy. Because I'm pretty sure it's your masculine energy that gets you to like get up and go to the gym. We all need some of that in our life. But it's the feminine energy that is like, okay, right now it's time to relax, get ready for bed. Maybe don't stay up all night before you have to go to work in the morning. Just kind of like being more this, honestly, on the caring and connecting side, right? I feel like business just tends to be like, they want to try to, I don't want to speak on behalf of all businesses, but I do think that there is like a surface level they want to appear to kind of be incorporating more of the feminine energy, but like they just generally tend to operate on a baseline. If you're operating on a baseline, then you're just going to be more in the masculine energy. And one of the things I really enjoyed about taking what I do and moving it to freelancing is I get to decide what is the paid time and what is not the paid time. I'm fortunate in the sense that being a one-woman business means that I'm accountable for my professional demeanor when I
so
connect
nice.
with people. It's so nice, and I trust myself when if I want to do something with a student or invite them to, for example, like a birthday party. It's just there's no ulterior motive. I think that they will enjoy it, and I get to make those decisions. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in our next episode. And by the way, next episode will be the last episode. So if you don't have questions today, but maybe you think of some later, you can also contact us, and we can talk about them on episode 3. The main thing I would say is if we have episode 2, just kind of bring it back to our theme. So our episode 2 is that life rewards the brave. And I 100% believe that, because I went to a networking event on Wednesday, and was explaining what I do to a very lovely new acquaintance, and she was kind of like, can you explain that to me a little more? And I was like, absolutely I can. Just know that you're opening up Pandora's box here, because what I'm about to say to you might not make a lot of sense to you. But I think really what it is it's kind of like, you think about it like, okay, she's like a freelance dance teacher. And it's like, I'm more of a freelance dancer, great at choreography, great teacher, but I'm really very much get hired for not only for like long-term dance lessons, but for a lot of short-term things. Like if somebody wants to make like a really cool virtual showcase. I just did that actually with Nikolai and some of his friends. We filmed one of those on Saturday, and I was telling this lady about it. I'm like, we do everything. We plan out like where it's going to be filmed, how it's going to happen, what the costumes are. I sew costumes for cosplay. I consider that one of my hobbies. I don't sell costumes. I just like making them, and it's everything. I did 2 of my dancers' hair on Saturday, and then I actually wanted to practice more for the second girl's hairstyle. I'm like, we're gonna have to do this again so I can get a little bit even better with the 80s hair thing. But I mean, I practiced victory rolls so that I could do it on my students in her hair. And it's just really more about being a freelancing creative. Like I just am really able to do all of these things. And she's kind of looking at me like, how does that's amazing. Like, first of all, she's like, that's amazing. And then the second part of her, I can just tell from her face is like, how the heck does that even work? And I'm like, there's one word. This is how it works. No overcommitment. Do not overcommit. This is why I have to be very distinct of my timelines of like, is this a short-term project? If it's a short-term project, I might have wiggle room in the schedule, but I have to make sure then that I'm giving myself time off to recover. For example, we went basically 7 hours this past Saturday working on this virtual showcase, and we had a fantastic time, very high energy, but you've got a lot to account for. Like, we need to make sure that there are breaks. We need to make sure there's a lunch break. And the only reason why it works is because how many people can you really call or message or contact for something like that? I think I'm the only one I know of in the area, although I'm trying to find more people. And there are amazing artists, amazing dancers in Orlando. This is why I didn't open up my own standalone studio, because in an area where you have a lot of fantastic studios and a lot of fantastic talent, I personally believe you will have more success being collaborative than going into direct competition. Because I'm like, I've lived in other areas. Like I lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where it's like there's some great dancers that come through, but there's not a ton of people that live there all the time. And just having all this access to talent and places that I want to go and take lessons is why would I put myself in a relationship where it becomes combative instead of, or combative instead of being able to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So I think that really, again, it's like the feminine energy in the business world is, I think that really comes in with collaborations and making the most use of resources. I actually think that's very much a feminine energy thing that businesses could actually benefit from, and being smart about how you spend your money and listening to your customers about what they need, because people will not become returning customers if they feel unvalued over time. Eventually they're gonna leave. And also if they don't feel that the value has to be so much more than just even a dance lesson or even being super talented with dancing. And I just think it's like, I'm just so happy that when I was in this really tough situation that I left in the first place. Then I rebuilt my life. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm a ballroom dancer now. Everything's perfect. I never have to change ever again. Oh, geez, I was wrong. Doesn't work that way. Struggling with the burnout, getting on that hamster wheel. When you're on the hamster wheel, well, guess what? You're really great at being on the hamster wheel. So for all of those of you that are thinking about ways that you can rebuild your life, getting off the hamster wheel it is challenging. And then once you're off, you're like, do I really want to get back on that hamster wheel? And I think that it's really up to you, right? You don't you can be experiencing burnout, you can be experiencing certain things. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely do a totally immediate drastic change of your life. It can be one step at a time in the areas that you can. And as Presh mentioned last episode, this is really the fun part. Like if you can let yourself become comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable, pull in the support you need. Grab a life coach who will be like, it's fun and exciting. It can also be a little nerve-wracking. You're probably going to try some things that you haven't done before. It might sound weird, but if you're a workaholic, laying on the couch, it's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be highly uncomfortable. And it kind of comes down to this idea of what self-love really is, which self-love, so I don't know, I think that taking a selfie can be a form of like self-love, and I know people have opinions on that, but I think that real self-love actually has to do with just not caring about what other people think about what you're doing, as long as you're not transgressing their boundaries and also not hurting yourself. Then I think try other things out. And like I said, once you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, that's when things get really, really fun, is you give yourself space to try things out. You give yourself space to fail. They have a term for that in school. It's the, oh man, I used to remember they used to give these all the time in elementary school, but it's the problems that you do when it's like, when you try it doesn't work, and then you just have to try a different way, and then it doesn't work, and you just keep trying, and there's a problem
solving, or
there's a problem solving term for that specifically. I'll know what it is by next episode, but it's like I think it's called like try and tell. It's like you just try different methods until it works, and it's one of your more basic more basic problem solving skills you learn in school as an elementary school kid. But it actually applies to adult life. It can apply to teenage, adolescent life. One of the things that I told my therapist when I was healing was just, I feel a little bit more childlike as I'm doing all of this stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of things I really enjoyed as a child are popping back up. And she said that was a good thing because there are parts of you that are there when you're a child. So I think that we're, anyways, the main point being, I really do believe that life rewards the brave. Like, the reason why I'm able to do what I do now, and again, we're going to talk about this more next episode. That'll be our final episode. So if you have questions, it'll be a great time to talk about them. It's because I'm there. Because it's because I just decided that I was like, yes, I am here to do these things with you if you need someone. And it's just about, most people work for a company, like most dancers and artists that are here work for a studio or work for Disney or work for Universal. And while I love a lot of the studios and I love Disney and I love Universal, I do not work for anyone else. I just completely work for myself, which means that when I am with a customer or client, it's you and me, baby. It's whatever you want, this, whatever, like in the creative field that they have visioned. It's like, I'm going to do what I can to make it happen because I have that opportunity. And because I'm doing this way, I also get to be plugged into the entire creative network here, which is just so amazing. So Presh, I'm going to, I just want to give you a chance because I know we're coming up to our last 4 minutes here. I didn't see us get any questions this time, or comments, but that's all right. I'm really grateful to all of you who joined. But if you have anything to add, Prash, or want to wrap us up for International Women's Day and rebuilding your life.
No, yeah, just hearing you talk about kind of like that Mod Podge of offers that you give to your clients because you have all these creative talents. That's exactly what living in alignment and living your purpose is all about. We have these cookie cutter career paths we're used to being exposed to on a regular basis. So when we're trying to reevaluate what we want to do in life, it can be really difficult because we're looking externally to figure out where we fit instead of, you know, reflecting within and thinking, oh, I'm really good at this, I love doing this, and just kind of creating your own thing. So that's so beautiful that you do that. I love that so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think we can wrap up for today. So Thank you so much. Next Friday is the final episode, and it's going to be about feeling like you're in the right place at the right time, which is what I call alignment. So I'm so excited for that final episode. Kind of sad, but you know, we could have you back.
Sad, but don't worry, we can still hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, we'll see you next Friday. It's 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 Pacific time and Arizona time. I'm Arizona, so we switch between Pacific and Mountain Standard. It gets very confusing. But we will see you all next time. Thank you so much for listening in. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Prash. Bye, Prash.
Bye.